"You're fired." The word echoed like gunfire in the marble hall. Tasha Freeman didn't flinch, but the twins did. And behind their trembling eyes, something shattered that Grant Whitaker never intended to break. The Whitaker estate sat high above the hills of Greenwich, a white stone mansion framed by glass walls and gates that locked tighter than hearts inside it. On the outside it gleamed. On the inside it echoed. Grant Whitaker stood in his office, arms crossed, watching the nanny cam feed on his tablet. There she was again, Tasha Freeman, down on one knee, tying shoelaces and wiping milk from Ezra's chin with her sleeve, like she'd done it 1,000 times. The twins giggled. One leaned into her hug. The other called her Mama Tash. Grant's jaw clenched. He should be grateful. The boys hadn't laughed like that since they were toddlers. But there was a line, and Tasha, whether she meant to or not, kept crossing it. 3 years she'd worked in his home, reliable, punctual, private, but too familiar, too involved, too maternal. He'd seen it before. Boundaries blurred, intentions twisted. He couldn't afford another heartbreak in the boys' lives, so he'd come up with a test, not to punish, just to be sure. Downstairs, Tasha Freeman was building a spaceship from couch cushions and throw blankets with the twins. "All right, Captain Ezra, you're on controls. Commander Eli, keep an eye out for aliens," she said with a grin, pointing a spatula like a laser. 10-4, Mama Tash, Ezra saluted. She laughed, full and warm. This house may have belonged to Grant, but these two boys, they were her entire heart. Every bedtime story, every scraped knee, every whispered nightmare they trusted her with, none of it was just a job. But just as she reached for a pillow, the door clicked. Grant's footsteps were unmistakable, slow, cold, out of place in a room filled with love. The boys froze. She stood up, brushing off her apron. Grant walked to the center of the living room. His eyes didn't soften, even as both boys ran toward him. He held up one hand. They stopped. "Miss Freeman," he said flatly. "A word." Tasha nodded slowly, following him toward the marble foyer. The twins trailed behind, silent, sensing something was wrong. He turned, no expression, then dropped it. "You're fired." The air drained from the room. Ezra blinked twice. What did she do?" Eli grabbed Tasha's hand, panic flaring in his small voice. "You said she was family." Grant kept his gaze locked on Tasha. "It's between her and me." Tasha didn't cry, didn't tremble. She looked down once, just once, at the tiny fingers gripping her hand, then raised her chin. "Don't let them believe I hurt them," she said quietly. "They deserve better than confusion." Grant hesitated. It wasn't the words. It was the way she said them, steady, heartbreak tucked just beneath the surface, like she'd been trained to hold it. Then she turned and walked toward the back entrance. Ezra sobbed. Eli shouted her name. But Tasha didn't look back, and Grant stood frozen, holding the silence like a weapon he didn't know how to put down. Tasha didn't pack a bag, didn't grab her purse. She just kept walking. Through the back kitchen door, past the rosemary planters she'd helped the boys grow, out into the side yard where her car sat under a flowering dogwood tree. The blossoms had just started turning pink. Ezra had said that meant summer was almost here. She gripped the wheel, trying not to cry, not because she was fired, but because they watched. Inside, the silence was heavy, the kind that fills palaces and still feels like a prison. Grant stood unmoving, trying to replay her words in his mind like a courtroom tape. "Don't let them believe I hurt them." She hadn't asked for her job back. She hadn't begged. She'd only cared about the boys. Even as he stripped her life out from under her, and somehow, and that unsettled him more than if she had fought. "Dad," Ezra said, tugging his sleeve, "what did she do?" Eli was already crying. "Was it because we call her Mama Tash?" Grant exhaled sharply and turned away. "She crossed a line," he said, "and it's done." But the words felt empty, even to him. 10 minutes later, the twins refused to come down for breakfast. They huddled in their room, silent, curled into a ball of shared grief under their space-themed comforter. The chef brought up pancakes. Neither touched them. In the hallway, Grant stood behind the half-open door, listening to their sniffles. Then something cracked through the silence. Ezra's tiny voice. "We should have told her we loved her." And Eli, barely audible. "We still can, right?" Tasha sat in her car outside the estate for nearly 30 minutes. Her keys stayed in her lap. She wasn't crying anymore, just staring out the windshield, her body numb, but her heart screaming. She had no backup plan, no second job, but this wasn't about money. It was about the way they looked at her, as if she were vanishing, as if love could be switched off like a light. And Grant, the way he'd watched it all unfold, like it was a chess move. Back in the house, Grant retreated to his office. He replayed the footage from earlier that week, Tasha reading to the twins on the living room rug, Ezra falling asleep in her lap. "Stars don't go away," she told them. "Sometimes they just shine from somewhere we can't see." He paused the video, then slammed the tablet onto his desk. It wasn't supposed to feel like this. It was just a test, right? Later that evening, as the sun began to drop behind the hills, the twins left a note on the grand front door, taped low where only someone their height would think to place it. It said in uneven handwriting, "If you come back, we promise not to let Daddy fire you again. Love, Eli Ezra." They waited. They watched the driveway. They fell asleep on the steps. She didn't come. And Grant sat in the shadows, unable to touch the note. At this point, what do you think Grant should do? Stick to pride or follow the truth in his sons' hearts? Drop your predictions below. The note was still taped to the door the next morning, wrinkled, faded from dew, but still there. Grant hadn't touched it. Instead, he stood at the kitchen island, scrolling through emails, sipping coffee that had long gone cold. The house felt different without her, louder somehow, like absence had a sound. "Dad?" Eli asked, entering the room slowly. Grant didn't look up. "Yeah, bud? Can we call Miss Tasha?" "No," he said too quickly. "That chapter's closed." Ezra came in next, holding a toy spaceship, his favorite one. "Can we give this to her then? She said stars don't go away." Grant sighed. "Boys, she worked for us, that's all. People come and go. It's part of life." "But she loved us," Eli whispered. And it wasn't defiant. It was heartbroken. Grant set his mug down harder than necessary. "Go get dressed, we're going to school." Meanwhile, across town in a one-bedroom apartment she hadn't called home in years, Tasha Freeman was curled on her sister's couch, wrapped in a fleece blanket with holes in it. "Tash, what happened?" her sister Denise asked gently, handing her a mug of tea. Tasha shook her head. "I didn't even ask why. He just said it like I was disposable." Denise frowned. "You were raising those boys, girl. That man knew what you meant to them." Tasha sipped her tea. "Doesn't matter. I stayed invisible long enough that when I disappeared, it was easy." Denise touched her arm. "Easy for him, maybe. But not for those babies." Tasha swallowed hard. "I don't want to make things worse for them. You being gone already did." Back at the Whitaker mansion, the twins refused to eat dinner. They sat at the long table, their plates untouched. The chef had tried to replicate Tasha's chicken tenders. It wasn't the same. Grant stood at the head of the table, watching them push food around with their forks. "Are you going to hire someone new?" Ezra asked flatly. "Yes," Grant replied. "Will she call us her babies too?" Eli added. Grant paused. "No." Ezra threw down his fork. "Then we don't want her." Eli's voice cracked. "She tucked us in even when she was tired." Grant ran a hand through his hair. Enough. But the more they talked, the more he felt the weight of what he'd done settle on his chest like stone. It wasn't just a test anymore. It was a fracture he couldn't explain. Later that night, alone in his office, Grant pulled open a drawer and took out an envelope. Inside was a photo, Tasha holding the twins at age 4, both asleep in her arms during Christmas Eve. She hadn't known he'd taken it. She looked like she belonged there. He shoved it back in the drawer. This was about boundaries, about protection, about control. Right? On the other side of town, Tasha sat with her phone in her lap, Ezra's voice from a video message playing on loop. "We miss you, Mama Tash. Even Daddy looks sad." She closed her eyes. She wanted to call. She wanted to run. But pride kept her still. The voicemail hit her phone just after noon. "Miss Freeman, this is Whitaker Prep. There's been a minor playground incident involving your former employer's children. They both insisted we call you, not their father." Tasha's heart jumped before she could reason with it. Her hands were already grabbing her keys. At the private school's front office, the secretary looked up as Tasha rushed through the glass doors, eyes wide. Before she could speak, she heard it. "Mama Tash!" Eli and Ezra ran down the hall, bandaged knees, tear-streaked faces, but alive. They threw themselves into her arms so hard she nearly fell back. "You came," Ezra whispered. "Of course I came, baby," she said softly, voice breaking. "Dad didn't even answer," Eli muttered, and then she felt it, the tension behind her. She turned, and there was Grant Whitaker, walking briskly down the hallway, phone still pressed to his ear, their eyes locked. The call ended. He didn't speak, neither did she. In the nurse's office, the silence was thicker than the antiseptic air. Tasha sat on the edge of the cot, holding an ice pack to Ezra's ankle. Grant leaned against the door frame, arms crossed, clearly uncomfortable. They wouldn't let anyone else near them, the nurse had said earlier. Only her. Now she gently brushed Ezra's curls back. "What happened?" "Kickball. Some kid pushed me and Eli got mad," Ezra said proudly. "I pushed him back," Eli added. "Then he called us names." "What kind of names?" Grant asked sharply. Eli glanced at Tasha. He said, "You're not our real mom." Tasha froze. Ezra's lip quivered. "I told him you are," Ezra said, "even if you're not married to Daddy." Grant stiffened. Tasha's hand trembled slightly as she adjusted the ice pack. "Well," she whispered, "words only stick if we believe 'em. And we don't, right?" They nodded. After the boys were settled and sent to finish class for the day, Grant and Tasha remained in the office, alone. Tension hummed between them like static. "Why didn't you answer when the school called?" she asked quietly. "I was in a meeting," he replied, looking down. "And now?" He looked up at her sharply. "Now I'm standing here, being told by my kids that a woman who doesn't work for me anymore is still their entire world." Tasha exhaled. "I didn't ask for that. But you let it happen." She stepped back. "Let it happen? They're children. They needed love." He didn't respond. She continued, voice low but firm. "You think because you cut me out of your payroll, you cut me out of their lives. But you can't erase love like that, Mr. Whitaker." There it was again, that tone, that unwavering dignity. "I didn't do it to hurt them," he muttered. "Then who did you do it to hurt?" she shot back. "Me? Or yourself?" Grant opened his mouth, then closed it again. Outside the nurse's office, through the narrow window, the twins sat side by side on a bench, kicking their heels, waiting, hoping. Should Tasha walk away again to protect her peace or stay knowing the boys still need her? "Tell us, what would you do?" They didn't speak again until they were in the parking lot, both standing next to their cars. The air smelled of fresh-cut grass and late spring. Tasha started to walk toward hers. "Wait," Grant said. "Please." She paused, turned. He looked like he wanted to say something important, but wasn't sure how. "I wasn't trying to punish you," he began. Tasha tilted her head. "You just fired me in front of 2 children who love me. That wasn't punishment?" He looked down. "I needed to know if you were here for them or for me." Tasha laughed, not with amusement, with disbelief. "For you?" He nodded slowly. "Women in my position, our position, get close to my children so they can get to me. Emotionally, legally, financially." She folded her arms. "You thought I wanted to marry into your bank account. I've seen it happen, twice, and not just to me." His voice was quiet. "I've seen what happens when people who don't care leave holes in children." Tasha softened, just slightly. You're scared of them being abandoned, she said, finally understanding. He nodded once. But firing me was still abandonment. Except this time, you did it. That hit him harder than she could have known. A long silence passed between them. Then quietly he asked, "Why did you never bring up your own kids or family? In 3 years, you never once mentioned them." Tasha blinked. That question cut somewhere deep, deeper than his assumptions ever had. She looked at him a long moment. "Because I lost mine." His expression shifted. "You... what?" "I had a son, Terrell." She swallowed. "He would have been their age now. Leukemia took him fast." Grant's eyes widened. "I don't tell people that, because when I hold your sons, I don't want them to feel like a replacement. They aren't." He didn't speak. He couldn't. "And I never loved them because of what I lost. I loved them because of who they are." Grant leaned back against his car, arms falling to his sides. "You've been grieving in my house all this time," he said, "and I didn't know." She nodded once. "You didn't want to." Silence again. Then he asked, "Why didn't you ever say anything?" Tasha looked away. "Because it wasn't about me. It was about making sure they were okay. And they were. Until you..." Her voice caught. "Until you tore the floor out from under them." Inside the school, a bell rang. Children filed out, backpacks swinging, laughter in the air, but not the twins. They walked slowly, hand in hand, still looking for the only face that made them feel safe. Tasha saw them, they saw her, and despite everything that they ran, she opened her arms, and this time, she didn't hold back the tears. From behind them, Grant watched, and for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel like a father. He felt like a man who had something to learn. They didn't go back to the mansion right away. Instead, they stopped for ice cream. A little shop just off the main road. Tasha's idea. Not expensive, not gourmet, just scoops and sprinkles and sugar smiles. The boys sat beside her on a wooden bench, chocolate already smeared across their cheeks. "Don't let Daddy eat all the pistachio," Ezra whispered, sliding his cup to her. She laughed. "Boy, your daddy looks like he don't even like pistachio." Grant smirked. "It's sophisticated." Tasha rolled her eyes. "It's green, that's all." The boys cackled like it was the funniest joke they'd ever heard, and for the first time in weeks, the silence between her and Grant wasn't filled with tension. It was just space, comfortable, safe. After ice cream, they drove to the community park, the one with the rocket slide and musical stepping stones. The boys ran ahead. Tasha and Grant walked slower, shoulder to shoulder but not quite touching. "They asked me if I was going to be their stepmom," Tasha said after a while, her voice gentle. Grant choked slightly on his bottled water. "They what?" "Last year, right after the twins' birthday party, Eli said, and I quote, 'If my dad wasn't so scared of love, you'd be my mom already.'" Grant blinked. "They said that?" She laughed softly. "Kids don't filter." "No," he said, "they don't." A pause. Then she asked, "Are you scared of love?" He didn't answer immediately. "I'm scared of needing someone again," he said eventually, "and losing them." She nodded slowly. "Yeah, I know that kind of scared." He looked at her, really looked at her. "I'm sorry, Tasha, for not seeing you before I pushed you out." Her eyes shimmered. "I didn't need you to see me, Grant. I just needed you to see them, and what I meant to them. I do now." They sat on a park bench while the sun began to set. Ezra and Eli raced back and forth between slides and swings, shouting, laughing, completely unaware of the weight that had lifted. "Do you know what I missed most?" Tasha asked. He turned to her. "What?" "Bedtime," she smiled. "That moment after the story, when they start to drift and you whisper something small and they remember it forever." "What did you whisper?" She looked at him. "That their hearts were the bravest thing I'd ever known." Grant looked away, swallowing hard. "You're better with them than I'll ever be," he said. "No," she said without hesitation. "You're just scared to show them how much you care." "And if I do, what then?" She met his gaze. "Then maybe you stop being a boss or a provider or a protector, and just get to be their dad. The twins ran back panting, cheeks red from the sun. "Can we go home now?" Ezra asked. "Only if Mama Tash comes too," Eli added quickly. Tasha looked at Grant. He nodded once. "Come home." She smiled. It felt like the beginning of something. 2 days passed in calm. Tasha was back in the house, no longer the maid, but something more. She cooked dinner like she used to, helped with homework, tucked the boys in with stories and quiet songs she hadn't sung in months. Even Grant, though reserved, had softened. He'd started eating breakfast with them again, asked Tasha what she wanted on the grocery list, asked, never told. It felt almost like a real family. But peace is fragile when pain's been buried, and sometimes it only takes one unopened door to break everything. Grant had stepped away for a meeting. The boys were down for a nap. Tasha, cleaning up in the office, noticed a drawer left open in his desk. The photograph caught her eye. It was her, with Ezra and Eli asleep in her lap. Christmas Eve. Grant must have taken it from the hallway. The edges were worn like it had been held. Beneath it, legal documents. Her name, a non-disclosure agreement, termination terms, a full psychological profile on domestic staff interactions with children, and worst of all, a line item with her name and the word loyalty test highlighted in yellow. She froze. Her fingers went cold. So it wasn't just impulse. It was premeditated. He hadn't just doubted her. He'd documented it, planned it, controlled it. She was halfway through the hallway when Grant returned. He saw her face, and he knew. "Tasha, wait." She turned, the folder in her hand. Her voice was cold, controlled. "You wrote this." He stepped forward. "That's not what it looks like. It looks like you had someone run a background check on me, like I was a threat." He didn't speak. "It looks like you called loving your sons a variable to be measured." His silence was answer enough. Her hands trembled, but her voice never broke. "You let me believe I was welcome here again. You sat next to me at that park bench. Let me hold them like I hadn't just been tested, and all this time, I was just your experiment. It wasn't like that. Then how was it?" His mouth opened, but he had no words that didn't sound like strategy. "I was trying to protect them," he said finally. "No, Grant. You were trying to control love, and love doesn't work like that." Ezra and Eli had come down the stairs quietly, woken by the arguing. They heard it all. Tasha turned to them. Her voice cracked for the first time. "I'm so sorry, babies." Ezra took her hand. "You're leaving again?" Eli whispered. "We just got you back." She knelt, held them both tight, then stood, looked Grant in the eyes one final time. "I lost one son. I won't lose these two the same way. But I also won't stay in a house that treats my heart like a liability." Then she walked out. Again, but this time, she wasn't quiet. This time the door slammed, and the echo sounded exactly like goodbye. Grant didn't move, didn't chase, didn't speak. The boys cried until they fell asleep in each other's arms, and for the first time in years, the house didn't echo. It howled. Have you ever tried to protect yourself so much that you ended up hurting the ones you loved most? Tell us. Your story may help someone heal. The mansion was silent again. Ezra and Eli hadn't spoken more than a few words since Tasha left. They didn't ask about dinner. They didn't want bedtime stories. They just curled into each other on the living room couch and waited for someone who wasn't coming. Grant sat in his office. The documents were still on the desk, exposed, undeniable. He picked up the picture again, the one of Tasha and the twins on Christmas Eve. The edges were smudged, as if he'd been holding it more than he realized. He dropped it, then picked it up again. Across town, Tasha sat on Denise's front porch wrapped in a blanket. The sun had gone down hours ago. The tea in her mug had long gone cold. Denise joined her in silence. Then, softly, "You love them, don't you?" Tasha didn't answer. She didn't have to. "I think love is the scariest thing we get good at," Denise said, "especially after we lose it." Tasha's fingers curled around her cup. It's not the boys I'm scared of. It's him, Grant. The way he thinks love can be audited. That's not love. That's a power game. And yet you stayed for 3 years. I stayed because I was good at being invisible. And then I stopped wanting to be. At home, Grant stood outside the twins' bedroom door. He heard them whispering. "Do you think she's mad at us?" Eli asked. "No," Ezra said. "She was mad at Daddy." A pause. "I would be too," Eli added. Then Ezra's voice broke. "What if we're not enough to make her come back?" Grant backed away from the door like it had burned him. He didn't sleep. He couldn't. At 2:13 a.m. he opened his laptop, not to pull up stock reports, not to check the nanny agency, but to write a letter, the kind of letter he'd never written before. No legal jargon, no defense, no calculations, just truth. "Tasha, I thought I had to protect them from you, but the truth is, I was just trying to protect myself. You were never the threat. You were the gift I was too proud to trust. And now, I don't know how to fix what I broke, but I know I want to try if you'll let me." He printed it, folded it, laid it on the kitchen counter with a small item beside it, Ezra's rocket toy, the one Tasha had given him 2 birthdays ago. He left the envelope unsealed, but he didn't send it. He didn't have the courage yet. At the same time, across the city, Tasha opened her phone to a video. Eli had texted it from his iPad. It was just 10 seconds, but it shattered her. "Mama Tash, we miss you. I know Daddy was wrong, but we still need you. Can you please come back? Even if he doesn't say it, I know he does too." She closed her eyes, pressed the phone to her chest. Her hand hovered over the screen. Should she go back? Could she? At dawn, the Whitaker estate was bathed in soft gold light. Tasha's car pulled up the long driveway. The boys were still asleep. Grant was in the kitchen, pacing, unsure what he'd say if she came, and then he looked up and saw her silhouette at the door. The front door opened slowly. Grant turned from the kitchen, where the letter still sat untouched on the counter. Tasha stepped inside, no suitcase, no apron, just her. He didn't speak. Neither did she. Not yet. She walked to the kitchen, stopping at the counter where the letter and toy rocket sat side by side. She picked up the paper, unfolded it, and read. When she finished, she looked up at him. Her voice was soft. "You wrote this at 2 a.m., didn't you?" He nodded. "Couldn't sleep." "Good," she replied. "Neither could I." A small, sad smile crossed her face. Then, more seriously, "You meant every word?" "I did. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't trying to win. I was just trying to be honest." She folded the letter again, held it in her hands. "You still think love is something you test, Grant?" He shook his head. "I think it's something you learn to trust." A pause, then, "Tasha, if you need time, if you need space, I'll respect that. I just wanted you to know. I see you now, not as staff, not as some variable, as you, the woman who raised my boys when I didn't know how." Her throat tightened. "They weren't hard to love." He took a breath. "Neither were you." Upstairs, tiny footsteps began to stir. Eli peeked over the railing, eyes still puffy with sleep. "Is that—" Ezra's gasp followed. They ran, barefoot, pajama-clad missiles, into Tasha's arms before she could even bend down. "You came back!" Eli cried. Ezra clung to her waist. "We knew you would." Tasha held them both, tears finally spilling freely. "I told you, stars don't go away. Sometimes they just shine from a little farther off." Grant stepped forward, uncertain. "Can I—" Eli reached out and grabbed his hand, pulled him in. So the 4 of them stood together, not perfect, not fixed, but together. For the first time, really, together. Later that afternoon, the house was alive again. Pots clanged in the kitchen. Ezra was singing. Eli had brought Tasha every drawing he'd made since she left. Grant stood at the doorway watching them laugh. He stepped in, rolled up his sleeves, and picked up a mixing spoon. Tasha looked over. He shrugged. "What?" I figured it was time I learned something. She raised an eyebrow. You? In a kitchen? He smiled. You're not the only one trying to be better. That night, after the boys had fallen asleep, both insisting Tasha tuck them in, Grant stood in the hallway watching her come out of their room. She leaned against the wall, exhausted, at peace. He joined her. You ever think about starting over? He asked. She turned to him. You mean this house? I mean everything. No roles, no contracts, just showing up for each other. She studied him for a long, quiet moment. I don't need perfect, Grant. I just need real. He nodded. Then real is what I'll give you. Do you believe true love can survive even after being tested this hard? Tell us in the comments. We want to hear your stories. Later that night, before going to sleep, Tasha passed the twins' room one last time. They were whispering again. Eli said, I think she's going to stay forever now. Ezra replied, Yeah, 'cause Daddy finally caught up to what we already knew. Tasha smiled in the dark, hand pressed gently to the door frame. Downstairs, Grant placed the old photo, Tasha and the boys, on the mantel. No frame, no glass, just there. Finally where it belonged,